friends, welcome back. This is Something's Happening Here, and this is our Christmas week, our week where we're talking about the birth of Jesus, because if you are watching this in its first broadcast, then today is Wednesday, and Christmas is on Sunday, so it's just a few days away. We got to go through the housekeeping stuff, so make sure you're subscribed, make sure you are liking and following the page on Facebook, or that you have hit the notification bell on YouTube, or that you have gone to the podcast section of talkingdonkeyinternational.org and bookmarked that page. And thank you for doing that. That way we can talk to you every day as we continue to make these shows. This week, our title for the episode is called Ho, Ho, Holy Night. And with a title like that, you know that we have to talk about Santa Claus at some point, right? Ho, ho, ho. We're going to talk about Santa today. Today is all about Santa. And so we're going to an article that we are reading from, what is this place called? The St. Nicholas Center. There's a whole center dedicated to this. And the mission of this group is to discover the truth about Santa Claus. So here we go. You are probably aware Santa is Saint Nick. Jolly old St. Nicholas. So there was a real guy named St. Nicholas once upon a time. And I'm going to read you from the article about some of the mythology of this man. The true story of Santa Claus begins with Nicholas, who was born during the 3rd century in the village of Patara in Asia Minor. At the time, the area was Greek and is now on the southern coast of Turkey. His wealthy parents, who raised him to be a devout Christian, died in an epidemic while Nicholas was still young. Obeying Jesus' words to, quote, sell what you own and give the money to the poor, Nicholas used his whole inheritance to assist the needy, the sick, and the suffering. He dedicated his life to serving God and was made Bishop of Myra while still a young man. Bishop Nicholas became known throughout the land for his generosity to those in need, his love for children, and his concern for sailors and ships. So, here we are. You can easily see how the facts of this real man's life became mythologized into the concept of Santa Claus, right? Because he was a Christian man. He loved to be generous. He went to the sick and the suffering, but he had a special love for kids. Because remember, his own trauma happened to him when he was a kid, when he was young and his parents died. And so his heart was just full of love for people of that age in similar circumstances, and he wanted to show that love through generosity and gift giving. So lo and behold, that over time that becomes Santa Claus, who brings gifts to children once a year. I'm going to read you another paragraph from the article here that tells you about the later part of his life, and it makes some intense claims that you can choose to believe or not. This is definitely in church canon surrounding this man, but it's up to you whether you believe it happened this way or not. Under the Roman Emperor Diocletian, who ruthlessly persecuted Christians, Bishop Nicholas suffered for his faith, was exiled, and imprisoned. The prisons were so full of bishops, priests, and deacons, there was no room for the real criminals, murderers, thieves, and robbers. And is there not a parallel to that today? Anyway, after his release, Nicholas attended the Council of Nicaea in AD 325. He died December 6, AD 343 in Myra and was buried in his cathedral church, where a unique relic called manna formed in his grave. This liquid substance, said to have healing powers, fostered the growth of devotion to Nicholas. The anniversary of his death became a day of celebration, St. Nicholas Day, December the 6th, which that was under the Gregorian calendar, so if you translate that to our modern day calendar, that would be December 19. And so you see that even without the passage of time, of centuries and of time, he already has some mythology built right into him through this weird manna thing that happened after he died. Now, manna is in fact a biblical concept. God has been known to use a liquid substance out of nothing that brings life and healing. And for all I know, that happened here. Although such a thing showing up in the grave of a dead person is very different from how it appears in the book of Exodus. But nonetheless, that is a biblical concept, and I have no way of knowing if that really happened or not. That is simply part of Nicholas's mythology. But we see that he's like magic, even in this mythology. He's this magic guy who has, divine, or maybe he doesn't have the divine powers, but God blesses him with God's own powers so that this weird substance shows up after his death. And combined with his love for kids and his generosity, we have this magic, elfish man who brings presents to kids. Santa Claus. What I want to point out here, the first thing that I want to point out is that he was born, the actual person was born in the 3rd century. That means in the 200s AD. And therefore, automatically, even without learning anything else, we should realize that the concept of Santa Claus has nothing to do with the birth of Jesus. Nothing at all. Right? How could it? Jesus was born almost, 250 years or so prior to when St. Nicholas was born? So how in the world could Santa Claus have anything to do with something that happened 200 plus years before Santa Claus even existed? It doesn't make any sense at all. And once we realize that, I hope we then realize how ridiculous the modern day war on Christmas really is. Because what are we even fighting for? We're fighting to use a symbol that is really far removed and disconnected from the actual historical figure that was the origin of that symbol, which in turn antedates the birth of Jesus by 200 years and more, right? And so I guess post dates. Yeah, that would be the right one. Post dates the birth of Jesus by 200 years or more, right? So why are we fighting about Santa Claus? Why are we pretending that's a Christian image at all? That has anything to do with Jesus at all? It's not. And if anything, the concept of Santa Claus has done more to push Christmas into a secular holiday, away from a religious holiday, than probably any other single thing, right? Because everybody realizes, whether you know all this history of St. Nicholas or not, everybody realizes on some level that Santa Claus has nothing to do with Jesus. And so therefore, it can become almost an ecumenical symbol, right? You don't even have to be Christian. Well, hey, you're Jewish, but come on over for Christmas anyway, because Santa Claus has nothing to do with Jesus. So let's all just enjoy the mythology of Santa Claus, and we'll just pretend that Jesus isn't part of this at all. So hopefully that gives us some context about what it is we're fighting for and fighting about. But I actually want to go to a different page on the same website, the St. Nicholas Center, because the real man, Nicholas, he was generous, but he was not always so kind. And there is a historical event that is tied to that Council of Nicaea that I just find really, really interesting. And I want to read it to you. In AD 325, Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea, the very first ecumenical council. More than 300 bishops came from all over the Christian world to debate the nature of the Holy Trinity. It was one of the early church's most intense theological questions. Arius from Egypt was teaching that Jesus the Son was not equal to God the Father. Arius forcefully argued his position at length, and the bishops listened respectfully. So, right there, we realize that Arius, the Arian ideas about the Son of God, Jesus, not being equal to Father God, that's still with us. Now, I'm not going to get specific here because I'm trying to invite a broad audience, not alienate anybody. But there are major Christian denominations today whose core theology is Arian, right? Where Jesus is not equal to God the Father. He is some sort of subsidiary God, right? Some person of power, but not actually divine, equal to the Father. So these ideas are still there. The Arian ideas of the kind of denigration of Christ's divinity, the more you study Christian history, the more you realize the sheer chaos that these Aryan ideas have caused all through history. Literal genocides have happened because of this Aryan idea. All right, so the article continues. As Arius vigorously continued, Nicholas became more and more agitated. Finally, he could no longer bear what he believed was essential being attacked. The outraged Nicholas got up, crossed the room, and slapped Arius across the face. The bishops were shocked. It was unbelievable that a bishop would lose control and be so hot-headed in such a solemn assembly. It goes on from there. For the sake of time, I'll just summarize. They bring him to the emperor. The emperor disavows any authority, says, yeah, sure, it's illegal to strike people, but you guys are bishops, so you figure it out yourself. And so the bishops defrocked him and threw him in jail. And while he was in jail, he alleges that he had an experience with Jesus and the Virgin Mary, right, the mother of Jesus, where they both appear to him. They ask him, why are you in jail? And his answer is, because I love you so much. And then, according to his allegation, these two apparitions, right, the spirit of Jesus and the spirit of his mother, or maybe they were corporeal, I don't know, but whatever he encountered, freed him from the chains and gave him back his bishop garments. So the following day, when the jail keepers came and looked at him, he was out of his chains and in the garments that had been stripped of him. So they all apparently believed a miracle had taken place. And so the church reinstated Nicholas back to his original position because they didn't want to get on the wrong side of God. And so they actually asked the emperor to free him from jail, and they reinstated him as the Bishop of Myra, where he eventually then died. So isn't that funny? Like, this is Santa Claus. This is the historical guy on which we have based the image of Santa Claus. And I just think it's interesting history. I think it's really funny. I think it gets to the heart of why people and God are not the same, right? Even the people who are supposedly living in representation of God like that are all too very, very, very human. And we lose our tempers and we have all the same flaws as everybody else. So I just think it's really interesting and funny. But the kind of moral lesson of the whole day today is Santa Claus has nothing to do with Jesus. Nicholas was a believer in and follower of Jesus, and he was very generous and kind, except when he wasn't, except when he was slapping the apostates across the face and getting in prison for it, you know? But let's just remember all of this in its proper context. When we have our holiday in a few days on Sunday, I know Santa is part of it in the culture, maybe even in the minds of your kids, depending on how you're raising your kids. But let's never confuse these two issues, because Jesus is the reason there's a holiday. Jesus was the one born in a manger, born to a woman, the only begotten Son of God. Nicholas was not. Santa Claus was not. And we shouldn't be fighting over these things when there are so many actual important divine things going on that we can be paying attention to instead. So I hope that is a nice, interesting history lesson for you today, and also helps to clear away some of the cobwebs and confusion of this whole war on Christmas paradigm that we live in now. So join us again tomorrow. Tomorrow's more history. Really interesting history too. So I think we're all going to learn something tomorrow. May God bless you. Make sure you're fully subscribed. And I am Steve Hicks, Director of Podcast Ministries for Talking Donkey International. This has been Something's Happening Here. May God bless you all. I'll see you tomorrow.